Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Awareness Podcast with your host, Bill Free. And my guest today is Dan Schmidt. He is the filmmaker of the Samadhi films, the parts one, two, and part three is called The Pathless Path. Welcome, Dan, to the Awareness Podcast. We're so happy to have you on the show today, and thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
Well, I came across, it's so funny. I came across you unbeknownst. I mean, I wasn't looking in your direction, Dan. And then I interviewed uh, Jonathan Robinson, you were on his podcast also, the Awareness Explorers. And we were talking about documentaries. And because I'm working on a documentary with a couple of friends. And he said, "Oh man, the best documentary I have seen is the Samadhi films." And so immediately I found out about your films, and I went down in the movie room with my wife, and we sat and watched all three of them in
Mm.
binge watching. And I was blown away by the content of your films, the Samadhi films. And for you all that are not familiar with the word Samadhi, it's another word for awakening. It's an awakening experience, and it's a Zen Buddhist term, right, Dan, or is it Hindu?
Yeah, it's found in some of the Upanishads as well. So it actually spans many different traditions.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, when I saw part one, I thought, oh my God, this guy has really hit the mark on what the problem is in the human condition for one, and how we lost our way, or we seemingly lost our way. It's got so many great metaphors in it and stories. You give the story of the forbidden fruit, the Adam and Eve story. You give all of these mystical ideals of different mythological storylines that, and you give it a picture. You give a visual production that really um, brings you into the experience that you're describing. And I want to say thank you. I just want to say thank you for that production, all three of them. And the reason that this is an important topic for this show is you're going to be in our conference in a couple of weeks, the Know Thyself conference, where we've got 25 presenters, some of the best spiritual teachers in the world today in the non-dual and A Course in Miracles, and also scientists and philosophy. And you have offered to be in the conference at my request. Thank you for that also. And you're going to put some of your Samadhi film work in the conference for us to be able to share with that audience. And I think that's just amazing. So I kind of wanted to talk about the Samadhi films a little bit. What inspired you to make the films, and what might be what's different about part one versus part two, and what's different with part three, the Pathless Path.
Mhm.
So, Dan, what is it that inspired you to do part one? You probably didn't know you were going to do part three when you did one, but tell us
No,
about that.
yeah, no, it really, it's really not something separate from my own path. It's really something that it just evolved out of my own exploration and experience. Really, I would say the main thing that sort of put me onto this path was my own awakening. I've had many samadhi experiences, um, over my lifetime, at one point in my life, I've done different interviews where I've talked about, how I was just deeply embedded in the matrix, and just, in the world, going after, material things, and then, I got sick. It was like my spirit, or my, whatever part of me that is my evolutionary nature, didn't want that path. So I didn't pick up on the warning signs. I got sick. So really, it was so that journey, it's like the realization that I'm not this limited Dan character.
Can you go back to when you were sick and then something happened after that?
Sure. So I got, yeah, in part of my healing process, I realized I had to, my mind was pathological. So I knew that, meditation, would help me to, still the mind, or find the off button for my mind. So I got into Vipassana meditation. I started doing 10-day retreats, and did many of them. And I was a real beginner. So I was actually at my first retreat. They say beginner's mind is the best way to approach these retreats. So my first retreat, I actually had a full samadhi, Savakalpa samadhi experience. At that point, like, Savakalpa samadhi is realizing, sort of the energetic connection to the universe. So I felt myself as everything, but it took, many years, decades of work after that, to realize the truth that I'm also nothing, or to realize that form, or that energy is actually empty awareness. So it was when I um, had that realization, which was at a Zen center, which in Zen they call it Kensho, which is samadhi as well. It's just the Zen term for it,
Mhm.
but it's, realizing your true nature, essentially. And so at that point, that was the beginning of a real shift in my, it was simultaneous with sort of selling my business at the time. I had a music production company, and I just realized there's nothing else to do in this life other than, like, pursuing all these things that I was pursuing before seemed kind of ridiculous, and it was like another part of me came online, which was connected to, you could say, the Dharma, or, the truth, the eternal teaching that comes back, in this perennial form through the different traditions. It's expressed through the different traditions. So for me, it's like that connection to the truth, to the Dharma, just started to come alive in me. And, so I would meditate, and I would just get these downloads of information, and it would just keep coming until I did what I was supposed to do with it, which was deliver it into the world, essentially.
Yes, cool, cool. So, and was there a certain time of the day that would occur? Was it early in the morning that you would receive this information, these ideas?
I would say just, any time that I meditated, really.
Uh-huh.
Usually in the meditation, there's if I sit for a long enough period of time, there's a dropping away of the monkey mind, and then sort of an energy, or you could say a spiritual connection that happens. And so, yeah, but I know that the yogic time, of early morning is often when people have, their connections. But, for me, it didn't seem to be, localized, and part of it is, my meditation practice was very regimented for many years, but I've also sort of loosened that regimen as well. So I just follow a more intuitive, uh, sense of when I need to meditate. It's like the meditation finds me now, rather
Yes.
than
Yes.
rather than me, rigidly sticking to a schedule. It's like that, sometimes the stillness will just come, and it could be just lying in bed sometimes, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
I relate to similar experiences, I mean, that have occurred in my own life. So I'm a full yes in everything that I hear you saying. And also, I'm a little bit curious when the idea comes in. Do you go for and you feel like, okay, so this I see this idea. Do you go write it down?
I do. Yeah, or if I don't, then the way I describe it is it's almost like there's a higher mind that is, it has this message, and it's like it's on a loop. So even if I miss it, even if I don't write it down, it's like it just keeps coming back over and over. Or if I, sometimes I've realized, like, I'll write things down, and then I'll just keep journaling for a few months, and then I look back through the journal, and I'll realize I've written the same thing just in different ways, like a dozen times, and it's literally like it's on a loop. And it's interesting, because the information itself, is one thing, but then, the actual action that in life is another thing. And to me, that process, that creative process of actually, taking something that is from another level and bringing it into the world is actually, what I've realized is it's there's a sort of wiring process that's happening in me as well. So literally, these films, it's people talk about me creating the films, but literally the films are creating me as well, in the sense that they're literally forcing me, the little Dan as a delivery mechanism has to evolve. And that's part of why, these films have taken me a long time. Each one has taken years, because there has to be sort of this evolution of the delivery mechanism. So
Yeah.
it really isn't it's not separate from my own path. and
Mm.
and I've had many times where, like false starts, or I'll create something and it just doesn't have the aliveness or energy. And so it's a constant exploration, to kind of bring it in a way that feels right and feels, it's I know when it's done, when that download process changes or stops, something new will start to come through then, once
Right.
it's complete. So
Right. I did notice in your films. The first film has over 6 million views at this date, and it's probably really 2 million views that watched it 2 more million times or 4 more million times, because I watched it 3 times and I still want to see it again. And I told people this morning about it because I think it's a really important communication that the world is ready to hear and is ripe for hearing. And it's when I was watching your different parts to it, I could see the loop that you're describing in the second film. I saw a similar idea presented in a different way, with using different words, with it's the same point of what was being pointed to, and it was brilliant. I was blown away by the skill of what it must have taken to take those thoughts and then put it into a video or animation kind of a mechanism. It was breathtaking. And so when the idea comes and you write down the idea, does the imagery come too? the things that were so like mystical feeling? Because I feel, and this is another question that I have for you, does the transmission of the visual connect with the auditory, make a different kind of a synopsis connection to the brain? Do you know anything about that?
Well, for me, like a lot of the visuals, like to answer the first part of your question, it doesn't. There's no process really to any of it. Like sometimes I'll just have a feeling, and then I create music. So there might be a piece of music that kind of sets the tone for it, and then I'll find things, the visuals later. Sometimes it's the reverse. Sometimes I'll be exploring a fractal, and a lot of the sacred geometry or the fractal geometry. I find like it has a capacity to sort of bypass the normal filters of the mind, like we don't really understand, with the limited mind. If you think about some of these sacred geometry patterns, each pattern that we see, it's really just a little slice of a primordial pattern that's much more complex, but it's like we get a little tiny slice with our mind or visually. But if we're kind of open to just feeling it, there's sometimes a resonance that can go deeper beyond the mind. So I find that those types of images, showing it's really the geometry of nature itself. It's just pure mathematical symmetry. And but those, in the ancient traditions, like the yantras or these visual patterns were used as aids to take people to subtler levels of mind.
Mm, wow. Well, and also what I felt, because you're also the narrator of all of these films, and I felt, oh my God, the level of understanding that you were using in all of those many traditions was astounding to me. It made me feel like you're not just you're sort of a professor, scientist, filmmaker, movie maker, animator, and producer, director, all of these things in one young bodysuit that we call Dan. And I was just really, I was blown away by what it must have taken to put all of those pieces together. And I want to applaud you for that. It's just a masterpiece, similar to Course in Miracles is a masterpiece of document, helping people to move from the ideas that are presented in the Bible, that were given in Christian language. It's a document that's offered to the world using psychology, using Western, using the religious language, using Eastern Advaita metaphors, and you've kind of done that in a film production called the Samadhi films, and just amazing. And I'm also curious, when you're working on part one and part two, it seems like part one, Samadhi part one, is is who we are, or what, discovering why we're here,
Mm-hmm.
and what got us where we are in the matrix construct, and then part two, Samadhi, moves to a different storyline, and it brings in the I mean, the part one brings in the teaching, brings in the traditional, the different traditions. Part two in a different way. Can you talk about part one, what the
Sure.
mystical ideas are for what the storyline is?
hmm So part one was really conveying why samadhi is important, sort of talking about how we've forgotten that samadhi is even a thing, and then we've forgotten that we forgot. So it's really why it's important. Why is samadhi even a thing, and what's the benefit of it? Um, so the why question is really part one, and then part two is using analogies to explore what samadhi is. So we move from why to what, and then part three is really it's how, how we realize samadhi. But there's a paradox in the how, because the little conditioned self wants to know how, and ultimately there is no how, but there is, before there is no how, there is a how. So it's this, the pathless path is learning, techniques, and the sadhana, the practices, the spiritual practices, which will lead us ultimately to the wisdom and the letting go, to be sort of choicelessly present in the moment, or in the now, which, to be here in the now requires no, there's no instruction I can give to that, but yet there is a sort of purification process that one, the self structure goes through, which makes that awakened state more likely to
Yeah.
to happen. So I would say those are the three things. There's the why, the what, and the how.
Okay. Yep, that
Mhm.
makes sense. And that's what I was when I finished two, I thought, well, okay, I'm still not sure how we get out of this.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to hear that not only did you produce the how, you gave a lot of really good content in how to see things differently with some practices, techniques, and then also you're very clear that we need to let the practices and techniques go.
Mhm.
That's important. And as a meditator, Vipassana, that's like in that's the intense, that's the most intense meditation that a normal person could ever think of. It like starts out with a solid 10 days. Is it 10 hours a day you're in meditation for
Mhm.
Vipassana?
Yes, and the also the Zen tradition has something very similar called the sesshin, which is, it's a similar kind of rigorous structure. So, for me, like the Samadhi Center is also another place here. Like there's no tradition that I follow here, but it's really essentially like a Zen or a Vipassana style retreat, and and that to me is the key. Like the films, the very most the film could do is maybe sort of wake something up inside of people to become interested in the path, an intellectual, understanding. Like it's words, it's images, it's sounds, and it may stir something, that's deeper than the mind. It may stir something, a recognition, or the self that is, or the heart, or whatever you want to call it. A part of us may recognize that, that pointed to there. So it may, hopefully will excite people, or get them curious enough to really engage with these practices that will start to loosen the bonds of the self structure, so that we can, like my goal with the Samadhi Center and the meditation retreats is to get people to the point where they have a direct experience of their true nature, and once they do, then it doesn't matter, the teachings, all that stuff, none of it matters. Once you've had that direct taste of your true nature, then your life will change. It'll become an exploration. So for me, these retreats, like we put people in, we put the ego structure in conditions of no escape, which is you know, rigorous meditation, constant self-inquiry, to the point where, one of my favorite meditation teachers, Dogen, says that the meditation is ultimately the dropping off of mind and body. So when we enter into this really rigorous practice, eventually, if we're at it long enough, eventually the mind will drop off, and the even the deeper layers of mind, the body will drop off, and we'll have a samadhi experience, or perhaps before that maybe a jhana experience, like stages of meditative absorption. And there's many different sort of spiritual peak experiences one can have before realizing one's true nature as well. So, but all of those experiences can really kindle the path. Even a small experience of inner energy for some people can just take them into a real inner journey, and orienting away from the matrix and into a spiritual journey.
Yeah. Yeah. And what would you call glimpses? What would you call a glimpse where you have a snapshot of self
Mm-hmm.
realization?
Mm-hmm. So a glimpse of our true nature, like a true. So there are sort of the jhanas. So I'll just clarify the language here. So the jhanas are stages of absorption. So some, it's been talked about. There are many varieties of spiritual experience. Um, you know, so there are the experiences which are, sometimes they're like we live mostly on the mental and physical, so we can get a taste of other levels of self. So we can have an energetic experience where, when our inner energy becomes free of the conditioned pattern, we can experience energetic awakenings and a sense of merging, a sense of being one or connected to all things. When that energy really becomes free, we can connect with higher levels of self, sometimes called the astral levels, or the Vijnanamaya kosha in the Eastern traditions, the wisdom layers or higher mind layers. So all of those, all of those levels have their own phenomena and discrete experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and as we progress in meditation, as the layers of mind and body drop off, we can have an experience of the causal body, which is essentially what we experience when we enter into deep sleep at night. So there's no phenomena, but so the difference between like an awakening, a nirvikalpa samadhi experience, and deep sleep is, we're in that causal state. So there's no phenomena, there's no body, there's no sense of anything, but the I am awakens. There's this I am, the true self exists in that nothingness, and the beauty of having a nirvikalpa samadhi experience is, when the mind comes back online, it's that essential nature. First of all recognize that it was always there. It's always been, our truly the ground of our being. So it's like this cosmic joke. We realize, oh my God, this has always been, me. It's been the essence of what I am. And but then no matter what state the mind is in, waking, dreaming, or deep sleep, or, or whether we're having a merged, subtle body experience, it doesn't matter. That ground of our being is always there. It's ever present. It's the eternal I am. It isn't contingent on anything that's happening within the mind or the self structure. So once that awakens to itself, that's liberation. That's liberation from suffering, because it doesn't matter. If I'm not this limited self structure, going through states and stages and all of that, I'm this unchanging primordial awareness. Then you're free. You're free from from all the stuff that's going on in the matrix.
Mm-hmm.
But the paradox is, so having that awakening, most people, it will come and go, and or it will appear to come and go, and so having that initial samadhi experience is the beginning of an accelerated development process within the self structure. So the self structure starts to fold in a way that, whether you call it the inner lotus, the tree of life, there's this rewiring when the energy or spirit is alive, and it's no longer going into the conditioned patterns, but it starts to go, engage in this rewiring process. Then, the inner lotus will eventually grow to the point where energy will flow from the root to the crown. And when we reach that point in our evolution, then, they say that is the purified vessel. That's the vessel, that makes sahaja samadhi, which is the samadhi that doesn't appear to come and go. It's the permanent samadhi. That's the container that allows us to, be essentially like a living bridge between, between the divine and the, and this world.
Right.
So,
Wow.
that's the, that to that unfolding, that rewiring is something like that's the big guys have achieved that. This is like the Buddha and Jesus. These are like, to be that, then it's like the logos, the higher mind is literally living on earth, through this vessel. So the
Right.
self structure at that point has been purified or evolved or surrendered, however you want to say it, or merged into higher mind,
Mm.
essentially.
Yeah. Wow. That was I was able to track with that, which is pretty amazing to me that I was tracking with that whole description, because it sounds a little bit like, holy shit. that's that's a lot of stuff, but at the same time, it's understandable to a curious mind, to a mind, and to not just a mind but a heart that's open for truth. One of the things I loved about I mean, in the last film, The Pathless Path, you gave a really great description. I think it came from this guy Samsel, where you talk about dry wood versus wet wood. And because I saw this guy Samsel gave it same quote in Rupert
Mm.
Spira's latest book, it's like the readiness. And I'm sure you see this at your retreat. You described yourself as a beginner mind when you had your first Vipassana, and that when the mind, not the personal self mind, but the mind of that knows that this is a matrix, the mind that's beginning to open. I call it awakening awareness. That mind. is gonna it's open to be pulled into a direction of curiosity when there's something that's said in one of your films, or something that's said here on this podcast or at the conference, when something is said that resonates with the heart that knows, because the heart that knows, it's never asleep, it's always on in the background of all experience. And that thing gets it, I think it sort of gets a little charge when it will, it lights up a little bit when it hears something that says, oh, they're talking about me.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's talking about me. And I think that what your film does so brilliantly, all of them, is that it brings just a wonderful um, description of what's taking place in the mind, in humanity, in the social events of our time. And it gives a beautiful connectedness to these visual imageries that you have to have the experience in order to be able to put the idea onto a computer screen. And that's what you were saying, that you were was your evolution. It needed to have it needed to be embedded into your DNA, and then your DNA is now brought it into the film, and the experience begins to take root, or to take a resonance with the viewer. And that seems to be what's happening with all of your films. It
Mm-hmm.
seems to be that's and one of the things that I'm a little bit curious about, that because I know that your main antidote, so to speak, your main answer to the question of, okay, how do I do this? It seems like the main answer is meditation, and yet you're very clear in your films that you need to be aware of the subtle attachment to the technique, or the subtle attachment to this to trying to get somewhere, attain something. So describe meditation a little bit
Mm-hmm.
for us.
Sure. Yeah, it's one of my favorite topics. Yeah, so yeah, like the challenge with meditation, people, have, there's many different types of meditation. There's, Buddhist meditation, Taoist, Christian meditation, like, and any meditation that can be taught, it's obviously something that we store within the conditioned self, right? We learn, if it's a technique. It doesn't matter who we learn it from or what we learn it from, but it's something that's conditioned. But one of the greatest teachers on my path was actually, I've never met him, but Krishnamurti. He tirelessly tried to convey what what meditation is, and over and over, tried to convey that it has to be something that is natural. It has to be something here and now. It's not something that we just do, on a cushion. We do some practice or some process. It has to be something, that is an engagement with our life. It has to be a way, of, like, I love Krishnamurti would say, meditation is life. It has to be life. It has to be, a way of being in this moment, without the mediation of the character, without the mediation of the past conditioning. So to me, meditation is, if I ask truly, do an inquiry in this moment, how can I be here, without the conditioning, without the filtering of my past, without the self structure, without language, without knowing, So if I'm speaking to you right now, if I through the filtered mind, there's this person I know, his name is Bill. We're in a podcast, but if I drop that, and if I can actually be here, present in this moment, it's a mystery. Like this being, this screen in front of me, all of it. It's like there's an energy that comes alive, and Krishnamurti talks about the open mind. A mind that is alive and engaged, and it's not. The energy isn't running in the old patterns. So how do we open our mind? How can we be here and engaged in this moment? And without manipulating and controlling, and or the need to know. And so to me, that's what meditation is. It's an inquiry. It's not separate from self-inquiry. To me, meditation is knowing who we are in this moment, and finding a way to be present in a way that is not robotic and conditioned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That explanation feels like a part of the explanation, and it also feels like true meditation isn't. And I think that's what you're saying that Krishnamurti said, is that true meditation isn't something that you do; it's something that you are. You
Yeah.
are a living meditation. I think that's what I heard you say. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, and
Yeah, to know oneself, is
yes,
is really, it's to engage in that self-inquiry. So when I say, when I have a sense of I, what is that I referring to? If it's referring to this limited character, then I'm in, the matrix. I'm in
right,
in duality. But when that sense of I is blown wide open, when it's unlimited, then it's the mystery. It's the divine mystery of existence, and
yeah,
it's there's a the little self is, really doesn't know. It really is like in awe. That's to me the sign that one is actually in a meditative state, is there's this openness and a not knowing. It's like the little self is in awe on its knees, and whatever, and that what comes forth in that revelation is not. I can't say what that is. It's like my little dance structure. It might be in awe, but it can't say what it's in awe of. It's just
yeah,
it's like you become awe, or the this limited being becomes that. It's, and that to me is indicative of the non-dual state. It's like this, this the subject and object, the sense of this. There's a little me, and then there's something that I'm observing, or something I'm in awe of, or that duality collapses, and there's just, what we, if I love, Alan Watts used to, at that point, when he's trying to describe it, he would just take a gong or a bell, and hit it, and it's just boom, it's that,
there
and
it is.
yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, cool. I heard you. I watched your interview with Rick Archer a couple of years ago, and you said that your yoga practice, you do chainsaw yoga. It's something that grounds you.
Yeah.
And I like that, and also I saw something that you said that was talking about walking meditation. I like that idea too, because living in the experience as awareness, just living as awareness, just no description, no labels, nothing going on, but living as awareness, presence, is a living meditation. And I think that when I don't know whether I read it from something that, or I heard it on one of your films, because I binge watched them, but a walking meditation seems like that's the way to live life, in the embodiment of Samadhi.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, to me, what comes up for me is actually one of Dogen's teachings where he says, if you're sitting, just sit. If you're eating, just eat. If you're walking, just walk. And to me, that's the essence of all of the spiritual path. Like if you could just walk, have a complete experience of walking, so that there's nothing, you're not in your mind, you're fully, on the earth, embodied walking, then that's it. Like that's, in every moment, whatever we're doing, we have a complete experience of it without any resistance or without any filtering through the self structure. So there's no creation of memory, there's no imprint that is being stored or carried. It's a complete experience that passes through. So to me, that's the state. Which it isn't a state. It's not. It's like the ground. It's like, the interesting thing is, like the character, the Dan structure, whatever we call karma, there's a growth process happening still here. There's this evolution that's happening within the self structure. So the self structure is going to go through whatever it's going to go through. It's going to go through its growth. It's going to screw up. It's going to make mistakes. It's going to, have its delusions or whatever it's going to do. So, so we can allow that to just happen, without identification. So to me, this is the pathless path, right? It's like we recognize this ever present awareness, the process unfolding. So one of my favorite phrases is from Zen. We're always being Buddha, always becoming Buddha. So that awareness is perfect as it is. It needs nothing, but yet there's this constant, development process happening where the container, is, or the interface, with this reality is evolving and growing and offering greater potential for human experience. So this is the paradox.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's exciting too, Dan. It's very exciting to have the understanding, to see what's behind the curtain, to see what's really there that the body's eyes doesn't see, that's actually running the matrix. Mm-hmm. It's not separate from the matrix, but yet the matrix isn't in charge. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty cool. And we're coming to the end of our time together for this broadcast. And I just want to point people to be sure and watch the Samadhi films that are part of the Know Thyself conference. And if you're watching this on YouTube, there's a link to sign up for the Know Thyself conference. And we're also going to have a link for awakentheworld.com, so you can contact Dan at the Samadhi Center. Sounds like you do some exciting things up there in Ontario, and I'd love to visit sometimes. I was kind of thinking, well, he's only about 900 miles from here. I'm in Maine. And I was telling my wife about your center. I said, I think he's just right up in Canada. She said, Bill, I think Ontario is closer to Chicago. Yeah. But anyway, we're going to put a link for your website so people can contact you. Mm-hmm. And as we come to the close of our this podcast, which is really what we're talking about, is, this podcast subtitle is Living the Non-Dual Understanding. And the thing that has me so excited about what you're teaching, what you're sharing with the world, is you're sharing the passion of awakening, the passion and of waking up and living in the world and not necessarily of the world, yet you are still of the world. You're still in an avatar suit. And Dan, we have a couple minutes. I'd love for you to close us out with whatever you would like to share.
Sure. Okay. Well, maybe I'll just mention a little bit about the Wake in the World site. Part of what these films are doing, I've created a guided meditation series, and at the end of the films, that is kind of pointing people to this guided meditation series. So it's really taking you through the process of starting out with techniques and the breath, and then moving to subtler and subtler do the aspects of doing, to the point where all doing is dropped in the meditation. But it walks you through that process. So it's a 4-part series. It's totally free on the Wake in the World, and it's part of what I really wanted to do with these films is to get people to engage in a real self-inquiry or meditation practice. So that's available, and yeah, the center, you're welcome anytime at the Samadhi Center here. It's basically evolved in a way that it's just a collection. These retreats that I'm doing, they're 10-day retreats. It's called the I Am Retreat. And it's basically a collection of all my favorite tools for awakening. So incorporating meditation, different forms of self-inquiry, which there are inquiry within oneself, inquiry using partners, doing dyad work, and then inquiry within a group where the group is focused, their consciousness is on one person. And using all different modalities as well. So all of that is on Awaken the World, and yeah.
Cool. Well, it's exciting. I look forward to getting to know what you do more, and also sharing this with our audience and the world, because we share a very similar passion to be part of the awakening the world experience. I'm looking at your bio. Daniel started his nonprofit for Awaken the World initiative in 2012. We started the Teachers of God Foundation, which is a nonprofit, in 2012. And the purpose of Daniel's foundation is to create films and materials which are made available for free in over 30 languages for the awakening of humanity. And Daniel, I just love that we were able to make this connection, and I look forward to doing things with you and knowing more, just watching to see how your I don't want to say your business, really the opening of consciousness evolves through what you guys do. And I'm just really grateful that we could come together and in this way.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I'm also really excited that I love when what I'm doing starts to connect with different traditions as well. And there's been a lot of resonance in sort of the Buddhist and Hindu kind of traditions, but I love that within the Christian teachings there's a resonance, and I'm really excited about that as well.
Yeah, yeah. So are we. Well, thank you so much for being part of the Awareness podcast today, and I really look forward to seeing you at the conference in a couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.